Okay guys, and welcome back to another student questions answered video. Now, following on from the last lecture where John asked if it was possible to save an individual tab, an individual sheet from a master workbook and save that to a specific directory based on who the territory manager was, what we now want to do is copy multiple sheets from the master workbook and save that to an individual file and then save that to a specific directory. Well, that's easy to do. Now, John's idea was to have the sheets listed by the territory manager in a list and then create a loop to do just that, and that is exactly the right approach. So here I've created a who looks after what tab, and that's that list that that John suggested. So right at the top we have the territory managers 1, 2 and 3. These are the sheets that will be associated with each territory manager, and these are the sheets that we want to copy to our new workbook before we save it to the specific directory. Okay, so TM1 will have the sheet TM01 summary. He will also look after site 1, site 2 and site 6, which is way over here. TM02 will have a TM02 summary, and he will just like, or he or she will just look after site 3. So in this instance, what we want to do is for territory manager 2 is copy this sheet and site 3, this sheet into a new workbook. Now, just one thing to note here: if you record a macro and copy 2 sheets at once, the code is interesting, let's say. So we're not going to use that method, but I'm just going to show it to you here just so you can see what I mean. So I'm just going to record a new macro. I want TM02 summary and site 3. So TM02 summary, hit control and site 3. Then I'm going to hit right click, choose move or copy. I know that's off shot, sorry about that. Create a copy and new workbook and OK. And there we go. Now I'm going to stop that recording and we're going to go and take a look at that code. So here we go. Here is that code. We can see we have sheets open brackets array TM02 summary comma site 3 dot select and then site 3 dot activate, and then we do the copy thing. Now the interesting part about that is this array thing, and where we have to have these sites in exactly that format. So if we had just one site, we would have double quotes TM and the name of the thing, double quotes and then close brackets. But if we have more than one, each individual site name will have to be enclosed in brackets. We'll have to have a comma, but never have a comma at the end, whether we have 1, 2, 3 or however many sheets. And to be honest with you, that's a complicated way of programming. So I would take a different approach. So this is how I would do it. We'll break it down into individual chunks of code. Now I'm going to put them all in one sub, but it's nice and easy to understand. So I've copied the code that we created yesterday, the save me, because there are a couple of elements of that I want to reuse. And what I've done is I've created a new sub called saving multiple sheets, and I've just put in the declare the variables and the 4 bits that we need to do. Now I've added a little test in here to make sure that we are on row 1, which is where our territory manager lives, and that's basic stuff. We've looked at this earlier in the course. Okay, so the 4 parts are: the first part is create a new book with our first sheet. So we're going to copy our first sheet and create our new workbook and save it off. So far so good. We did that yesterday and everything's good. Now the second part is we want to flip back to our master file and then in the loop that John suggested from the list, loop through and then capture all the additional sheets one at a time and paste them into the book that we've just created. So far so good. Now what will happen if we have links on the summary sheet to sheet 3, for example, is when we do this, the link in the summary sheet is going to point to the original document. So what we're going to need to do is sort out that link issue, and that's as simple as a find and replace. And the final part is we're going to save and close the new sheet in the correct directory and then go back to our original sheet. So they're the 4 elements. Okay, what we're going to need to do is record a couple of macros so we can steal some lines of code, and then we'll build this up Lego style. Okay, so let's flip back to Excel and let's record a macro. And what we want to do in the first instance is exactly what we did yesterday, macro number 5. So what we're going to say is right click that, choose move all copy, I know it's off screen, create a copy, come to new workbook, click OK, and then we're going to hit F12 to save as, and Rod Jane, I think it was, we keep this one in, and we'll call this one TMO2 and hit enter. And then we're going to close that and we're going to stop. Okay, so there's our first macro. Now what I need to do is reopen that sheet because I just wanted to record the closing of it. So Rod Jane, there we go, TMO2, whoops, and there's TMO2. Now our second macro is going to be to add the other sheet, which is site 3. So again, I'm going to start recording a macro. And I'm going to choose site 3, right click, move or copy, and this time I'm going to choose create a copy and I am going to point to TMO2 XLS, which is the file we just created. Okay, so now we have sheet site 3 and sheet 2 summary, and I'm just going to hit stop. Now I'm going to close that off. Okay, don't save. Now let's have a look at the code that's being generated. So what we have is this one, code macro number 5, which is where we did the summary sheet. So this is get the first sheet, and this one was add the other sheets. So let's just go there, add the other sheets. Okay, fantastic. Now what we're going to do is just copy all of that and dump it over here into module 1 so we can have a play around with it, and I'm just going to put it up here. Right, I'm just going to close these so we can see this a little bit better. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to be on this sheet, the who looks after what sheet, and I've tied this macro here, this subroutine, saving multiple sheets, to this button. So when the code's finished, we can just hit that, we can select any of these, hit that, and it's going to work perfectly. Okay, so here we go. The first thing we want to do is capture this, the territory manager. So we're going to declare a variable up here. We're going to say dim my TM. Actually, I'll probably steal that from above, a string. Now I'll fully rem this before I upload the code. So there's our first thing, and what we want to say is we want to get the active territory, get the territory manager. So we're going to say my TM equals active cell dot value. And so far so good. That is going to read from this cell here. Remember, we've got this little check here to make sure we're on row 1. So there we go. We've got our territory manager. Now the next thing we need to do is have a file name to save it as. So I'm going to dim, and I'm going to call it my file name as string. And there you go. So now we're going to add our file name, and we're going to say my file name equals, and my file name is going to say year now because we want to have a date stamp, and month now, and is it day or date? I can't remember. I think it's day. Day now, and we want to have a space dash space and the name of our territory manager. So that is going to be the active cell value, or alternatively we could use the TM because that's going to be the same value. Okay, so and then we want to say and then we want to have a dot XLSX. So there you go. We've whoops. What have I not done? I've not put an and in there. So that's my file name. Now I like the way that we did it yesterday with my save path. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste that underneath here. So there we have my save path. Now what I do need to do there is add a backslash. Alternatively, we could just add a backslash in the save paths over here. So let me just declare that one too. So we have dim. Did I type I? No. So my save path as string Okay, so let's just run through that code so far and see what we've got. So we have my TM is TM01. My file name is going to be 2016-1027 space TM01.xlsx. So far so good. And my save path is going to be pulled from that VLOOKUP from the save path sheet. Okay, so far so good. Now the next thing we need to do is capture the name of this workbook where this code actually resides. So I'm going to call this master workbook. So I'm going to say dim master workbook as string, and that's going to capture the name of this workbook. So in here I'm going to say master workbook equals this workbook dot name, and all of these are earlier in the course, so if you download the My Macro book, you're going to find all of these snippets of code in there. So now we know the name of our territory manager, we know the file name we're going to save it as, we know where we're going to save it, and we also know the name of this sheet. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is do that copy the active sheet, or copy the first sheet and save it to that other workbook. So let's go back up to this code here. Now I'm not going to choose the close because we're going to do that way at the end. So I'm just going to copy that for a second and paste that underneath here. Bum 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 bum. Okay, I know it will. Okay, so sheets TM02 select, we don't need to select them, so we can get rid of that. What we do need to do is copy it, but we're not going to be copying the sheets TM02 summary. We're going to be copying the sheet with the name of the active cell. Oh, here's a thought. We actually need to move down a cell first, don't we? Because we've captured this and now we want to come down to here. So the next thing we want to do is say active cell dot offset, and that offset 1,0 dot select, and now we've managed to move down to this cell just here, and that is the cell value that's going to contain the name of the next tab that we want to do. So what we're going to do is, instead of saying that, we're going to say active cell dot value, and that is going to tell us the name of the sheet that we want to copy. We can ignore this change directory thing because we don't need that in there, and what we actually want to do is and again, okay, and now what we want to do is save the file. So here we have our path, but we've already specified the path, so we can just replace that with the my save path. So all of that can go. So what we're going to say here is my save path, and that we've created from here. So it's going to be my save path, and then the next thing we're going to say is my file name, and then we're going to say, I think that's it actually. Yes, because we've added the XLSX already. So there you go. So let's run through that code up to there and make sure that that works. So let's just pick TM02 and step through the code. Hopefully that's all in shot. So we're going to say F8, F8, F8. So capture our territory manager, TM02, file name, that's where it is. Save path is in Jane. That's the name of our original book. Move down the cell, you can see that's just happened. Sheets active cell dot value copy. Now I might have to bring this back to the front. So there it is, TM02, and we're going to save that, and hopefully there you go, 2016-1027 TM02. We have just created our new workbook. Now the first thing I'm going to do is go and delete that, because as we keep creating these things, it's going to start trying to save over the top. Okay, so that's our first part completed. We've managed to create the new workbook. Okay, the second part is to go back to the original workbook and then select the next files. Okay, so let's just come back to Excel. There we go. So that's the first part completed. Now the second part, go back to the original workbook. So what we're going to say is workbooks, open brackets, and we already have the name of this saved as master workbook, close brackets, dot activate. You'll remember that you have to activate these. So that's going to take us back to this sheet just here. Now once we're here, what we want to do, because we've already captured this, is move down another cell. So what I'm going to do is choose that one and paste that in there. So we've come back to this sheet and we're now going to move down to here, which will be site 3. And this is where we're going to add our loop. So what we're going to say is, we're going to say do while the active cell dot value doesn't equal blank, and then I'm going to close off that do loop there. So there's our loop. Now what we're going to do is continue to loop and capture these sheet names until we've reached the end of them. Now what we're going to do, so we can reference the sheet by its index number, is add a count and say x equals x plus 1, and you'll see why in just a second. Let me just go back to the top and dim x as an integer, dim x as integer. Boom, 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 there you go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to increase this by 1. Now the next thing we want to do is steal that code where we copied a sheet and added it to an existing workbook. So we don't need this select thing, but what we do need is this sheet, this code just here. So I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste that into our do loop. So there is that code. Let me just line it up. Okay, so sheets site 3. Now we don't need to say sheets site 3, we want it to say sheets the active cell value. So I'm going to replace that with active cell dot value, and that's going to give us our sheet name. And now we want to copy before workbooks, and we're going to choose my file name, because we already know what we've saved it as, and then we want to copy this before the first workbook. So what we're going to say is before sheets X. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is come back to this sheet, because remember that the new sheet will now be selected, and go through this loop again just to make sure that if there are any other tabs on there. So I'm just going to copy, where's that, there. That's what we want to do. We want to come back here. So master workbooks.activate, and again we're going to want to move down a cell. So again, let's go through that, copy and paste. Okay, so let's step through that code and make sure that that works. So let's be on TM02. And let's step through this code. Bump, 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 bump. We know the first part of it works, and we're now down to the second part. Wow, we got there quickly. So we've selected this sheet again, the master workbook. We've moved down, so we're on site 3. Now we're going to copy site 3 and paste it into my file name before sheets X, which will be 1. And then we're going to come back here, so that should have done that, and then we're going to come back here and we're going to loop again, and now we've reached the end. This loop should end, and it does. Okay, so stop. Let's go and have a look at that. Okay, so here's our new sheet, and here we have our two tabs. So we have a summary sheet and we have a site 3 sheet. Now I've just realized rather than copy before, what we want to do is copy after, isn't it? So we can have it at the end. Okay, so we're going to copy after. Now here's the complication. Let's have a look. If we looked at sheet 2 summary, you can see that this is referencing territory managers part 2.xlsm with square brackets. So that is going to be our third part where we sort out that link issue. Here's our new book. Sorry if this is quite a long lecture, but we're covering quite a lot of ground in here. What we need to do now is do a search to look for, where is it? We needed to do a search to look for this, which is square brackets, territory managers part 2.xlsm and square brackets again. So what we're going to do is we are going to copy that just so we can see what the syntax is. We don't want the apostrophes, we just want the square brackets. So I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard. Now I'm going to record a new macro, doesn't matter what it's going to be called. I'm going to select all the cells, hit Control and F, there it is, territory managers part 2, and I want to replace that with absolutely nothing, replace all, OK, and close, and I'm just going to select cell A1, and that has now broken the link with the original file. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the macro that created. So stop recording. I'm now going to flip back to here, view, properties window, and it will be living there. So here we go, macro 7. I'm just going to copy all of that and again dump it over to here. Is this where we're working? Yeah, this is where we're working. Okay, macro 7. So this essentially is the code that we want to use. We want to use the cells select, and then we want to replace that string. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to copy all of that, and we can butcher it in a minute. So we're into our third part. Bump. Okay, now what we do need to do is build that string, this one here, square brackets, territory managers part 2, and square brackets again. So here I'm gonna call this my replace, and my replace is going to equal quotes, open square brackets, and remember that this, we already know the name of this, and it's called master workbook, and quotes, square brackets. So now we have the my replace, and now all we need to do is replace this here with my replace. Oops, delete that one as well. My replace. There we go. And I'm also going to add that up to here as well. Dim my replace string. Okay. Right, so that will now do the find and replace for the sheet that we currently have selected. Now what we do need to do is loop through all the sheets on here to make sure that we've captured them all. So we need to wrap this in a loop. So what I'm going to do before we get to the cell select is say for x equals 1, 2, and we want to do it for each of the sheets. So we're going to say sheets dot count. So however many sheets we have, that's how many times we're going to loop through this, and we're just going to say next x. Okay, so that should do exactly what we want it to do. Okay, so one of the things that we do need to do here is select the sheet by its index number. So I'm going to say sheets, open brackets, x, and remember that's going to be iterating by 1 each time we pass through this loop, dot select. Okay, so that's going to make sure we cycle through all of those. That's going to select the cells, that's going to do the find and replace. Then finally let's go back to A1, because A1's nice and tidy. And then we're going to loop again, and that's going to break all of the links. Now the final part that we need to do is we need to go back to sheet 1, because that's a very good place to start. So the final part is sheet, let's say 1 dot select. That's going to take us back to the first sheet. These will be in a different order when we run through them. And then we're going to have to do our file save again. So where's that code? That's that just there, because we want to re-save the file. Now because we've made changes to this, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the display alerts, and that's going to stop it saying, hey, do you want to save the changes that you've just made? So what we're going to say is application dot display alerts equals false, and because that's why I didn't get the thing, because I can't type application display alerts equals false. Copy. That's going to stop us getting that, hey, do you really want to save this message? And at the end here we're going to turn them back on. And the final thing we need to do is close the file. So somewhere up here in the original code, there we go, active window dot close. Copy and come down to the bottom here and then close. I'll tidy that up in a second. Okay, so that should be all for elements. So let me just close this. Do you want to save? No. Let me just delete the file. Jane, there we go, delete. Okay, let's have a quick think through that code and make sure that we've done it right. So number, this checks that we're on row 1, that's all good. We know this part works for creating the new workbook. This part, the second, that loops through and adds all the other things. Here, before we go to the my replace, what we want to do is make sure we've selected the new file name again. So we're going to say workbooks, and this one's called my file name, isn't it, because it's the new one. My file name dot activate. Oops, I can't type activate. It's a little early in the morning for me. Then we're going to build our string for the find and replace. We're going to loop through all of those using the sheet index number, so 1 on the first pass, 2 on the second pass. Select all the cells, do the find and replace, select sheet 1 just to tidy it up, turn off the display alerts and save it. So let's select that one and then click over here. I'm going to close that and hopefully get this so most of it's in view. And let's step through. So we have our territory manager, our file name, our save path, everything works all the way through to here, and we're going to carry on going through this, and that is the end of that loop. We're going to go back to our new workbook. There's our new workbook. We're going to build our replace string, which is going to be square brackets and the name of that workbook, and we're going to go here, sheets 1, X select, and we are going to select all the cells, do our find and replace, select cell A3, let's say A1 just to be pedantic. Next X, loop through, so we're now going to site 3, that's our next sheet, select all the cells, do the find and replace, select A1, go back to sheet number 1, display alerts false, save the workbook, turn the display alerts on and close workbook and end sub. So let's go and have a look and make sure that that worked. Here's the file we've just created. And here we have TMO2 summary way at the front, and we have site 3. So let's just make sure that that does work. Let's just change that to 450. So there you go, that's destroyed the link between the two workbooks. So let's just run that one more time, don't bother saving the changes, and this time let's say TMO1 and just hit the button. Bum 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 bum. And there you go, so TMO1 should be rod. So let's come up to here, rod, and there's our file, and there you go, TMO1 summary site. Who does he look after? He looks after site 1, 2 and 6, and hopefully we have no links to the old workbook. Okay, fantastic, that works perfectly. Now one thing to do, let me just close that and show you something else. Now we've covered this in level 2, so if you've done level 2, my apologies for repeating this, but if you haven't done 11.2, here's a neat trick. Now with these summaries, this particular value referenced site 3 by name and then cell C1. So site 3 exclamation point C1, and it read this cell just here. But we didn't have that problem with these, because what I did was I built an indirect reference using the name in cell A3. So what I said was sum, open brackets, indirect, and then I built that string as a concatenation using the single quote and A3 and single quote exclamation point BB, and that became an indirect reference which we then summed, and that means you wouldn't have to break the links because that will go with you when you copy the sheets over. Now that was quite a long lecture, but we did cover an awful lot in there. Hopefully that was of some use, and as always, if you have any questions, just ask. Have a great day. Thanks very much.